This is another interesting fight taking place on the undercard of Mikey Garcia vs Jessie Vargas. Julio Cesar Martinez is a big favorite against Jay Harris, and by the betting sites I'm consulting, you would get just $1.04 on every dollar you put on his victory, while betting on Jay Harris would get you $7 to $9 on every dollar you bet on him, depending on the betting sites you're using. Now to the breakdown. Julio Cesar Martinez is a high-pressure fighter and also an aggressive counterpuncher with a very high work rate. Is very explosive and is one of the biggest punchers in boxing in a pound-for-pound sense. I've been telling you that he is a must-see because of his fighting style, which makes it for extremely entertaining fights. Volume, explosiveness, speed, punching power, it's all there. He cuts off the ring very well, uses the stiff jab and throws all of his punches with mean intentions. What makes him especially dangerous is that he's always subtly switching his stances in the middle of his explosive combos, which makes it very difficult for his opponents to notice it. Martinez is a great combo puncher going up and down. For example, if his orthodox opponent slips Martinez's overhand right counter, he gets caught with the following left uppercut or the left hook downstairs, and those punches downstairs still often land on their faces because his opponents are slipping his overhand right and are lowering their head level by doing so. From what I've seen up till now, based on the punches he took so far, I can say that Martinez has a very good chin as well, maybe perhaps an iron chin. In order for him to fight with the style he's fighting with, he has to have a very good chin anyways. He's rather compact, comes in behind the rather simple feints, and catches his opponents by surprise, the way he springs in from the outside so quickly with the leading hooks and uppercuts. But at the same time, when he initiates the action or counters with the hooks and uppercuts up and down, his circular punches are thrown very wide very often, so they are offering the opportunity to be countered. Especially when he's throwing hooks and uppercuts with his lead left hand from the orthodox stance, as he shoots them from the hip. Yes, throwing them from the hip makes them more difficult to be noticed by the opponents, but at the same time makes them wider and easier to counter. But truth to be told, a lot of his opponents are very hesitant to counter him, as they are tasting his power and volume from early on in the fight. That's why, beside of course having a very good chin, endurance and boxing skills, it would take a cold-blooded fighter to beat him. He mainly operates at mid-range, and besides switching up stances, he slightly steps to the angles during his combos as well. It was brought up to me by some people that they have been wondering how Julio Cesar Martinez has been so successful with his fighting style, despite it looking rather simple and easy to counter. Well, beside the previously mentioned reasons for it, another big one is that he's particularly looking to put his opponents in an unbalanced position, or wait for them to get themselves in such a position under his pressure. That's the exact moment he hurts them the most with his punches. One last noticeable example of it is when he's countering the jabs. He does it with different punches. It could be a stiff jab, it could be the overhand right while changing levels and moving his head offline by slipping to the left, or it could be with the uppercuts. But the particular moment he's looking to counter the jab with those punches is when his opponents are leaning in with their head over their lead foot while jabbing. And Martinez is extremely good at catching them in that position. He did it a lot against Christopher Rosales and a few times against Andrew Selby as well. And Jay Harris would have to be very aware of it, because that is exactly what he's doing all the time. So that's the first big problem for him against Martinez. In order to beat Martinez, the good counterpunching skills, speed, timing and distance control would not be enough because of his constant pressure. The one who wants to beat him has to have a great chin and endurance as well, because without them they would get broken down, but also cannot be hesitant because of his punching power and volume, and have to be cold-blooded and have no fear. which is a quality that Jay Harris possesses, but more about him later. You can't just run away from him, giving him the free rein and the space to step in freely and close the distance whenever he feels like it. Until he folded under Martinez's pressure, Andrew Selby did a great job of pressuring him with long straight punches from long range, pressuring him with those punches from outside, and then stepping out on Martinez's counters and countering them with his own counters on the fly on his way out of pocket. And counterpunching on the fly was very important for him, in order to prevent Martinez from planting his feet, all while keeping the counters short to punch in between Martinez's wide hooks and uppercuts. Also, moving your head offline when throwing power punches in the pocket against Martinez is very important. A very similar game plan should be implemented by Jay Harris. The most effective way to land the really meaningful punches and hurt him, unless of course you are the same type of fighter like him but better at what he does, would be by using the teeter technique, the same distance control technique Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez is known for and uses to draw the opponent's counters, and then counter them with the counters of his own by switching his upper body placement from front to back foot. Not by boxing and moving around the ring while allowing him to feel free to step in and close the distance. Of course, Martinez can be outboxed by a boxer who uses the movement, but without allowing him to close the gap so freely. It should be done with the pressure by using the volume from the outside with straight punches, like Andrew Selby was doing, before stepping out of range on his counters in order to prevent him to set his feet and then counter his counters on your way out. When I mention Roman Gonzalez's distance control, I mean staying just inches outside of the opponent's range and moving the head from front to back foot during his own combos and taking the half steps back in order to counter Martinez's counters, because at those moments he's very open to counters, but it takes some cold-bloodedness and great timing not to move too far away from him and be surgical with your counter punches, because of Martinez's unbelievable pressure and explosive combos. Rosales gave us a couple of good examples of him exploiting Martinez's wide punches in their fight by staying compact and countering them with short punches. Like I said, Andrew Selby was keeping him uncoordinated by throwing long-range punches while using the lateral movement and changing rhythm. As I said, every fighter could be beaten by any style, and Martinez is not an exception. In fact, I think that labeling fighters with any style is just oversimplifying them, based on a few of their more visible tendencies they are displaying in the ring. For example, Martinez can be beaten by a tough and well-schooled inside fighter, despite the ferociousness he's showing in the pocket. I'm not saying that Harris particularly is someone who would be able to do it, but someone else could do. Someone like Beterbiev, a great inside fighter, throwing short punches on the inside and smothering Martinez's guard immediately after throwing short punches, and would be able to exploit Martinez's wide punches that way, as he needs the room to throw them, despite being known for operating at close mid-range. In boxing, every action has a reaction no matter the so-called style of the said fighter. Martinez's tendency to feint and jump in leading with hooks and uppercuts from long range isn't an exception either. Martin Tecuapetla showed us how to react to it in the first round of their fight. He set the trap for Martinez by keeping the distance and keeping his weight on the back foot, waiting for Martinez to jump in with a punch, and at that moment Tecuapetla threw a stiff jab and the overhand right over Martinez's stiff jab. Jay Harris himself has a world-class hand speed and quick footwork. He knows how to close the gap after attacking from mid-range and step into short range to smother the opponent's guard or to step out. But at the same time, when he was trying to smother Angel Moreno in their fight and throw the right uppercut from short range, Moreno was constantly timing him with the short right hand. Harris showed me he's able to switch the ranges after his combos, which is a good thing for this fight and would definitely give Martinez problems. But in order for it to happen, he really has to keep his defense tight all the time and keep a better form of his punches as the rounds go on, especially since he tends to lose the form of his punches in the later rounds. On the other hand, when Jay Harris was using in and out movement against his previous opponents, most of the times they were trying to block or evade his punches and wait for their own turn to throw, which was too late because by that time Harris was already stepping out of range after finishing his combos. The point is, his previous opponents were not doing what Julio Cesar Martinez is going to do in those situations, and that is to sleep and counter. I'm also hoping to see Jay Harris use the lateral movement, which would be very helpful against Martinez, but it's still a question mark for me if he's going to use it, because out of a couple of his fights I've been watching, I only saw him doing it in the later rounds against Angel Moreno. Other thing that surprised me about Harris is his confidence with which he's fighting in the ring, which is totally necessary in order to beat Martinez, because, like I said, in order to counter him, you have to go out there and be cold-blooded. You cannot worry about the velocity and explosiveness about his pressure and be afraid of getting hit. Harris's punching power isn't on Martinez's level, and his usual guard consisted of keeping his right glove up and keeping the lead hand low, hiding behind left shoulder, would be bad for him against Julio Cesar Martinez's looping punches. If Harris chooses to plant his feet and use such a guard, especially since he often squares up during the exchanges, and protecting himself with his left shoulder and the right glove would leave a lot of space for a combo puncher like Martinez to catch him with the hooks from both sides. And while you can make the case that Harris's defense is better than Martinez's, he was still getting nailed a lot in the exchanges over his own punches against the lesser opponents. If, instead of preventing Martinez to set his feet by the movement, he chooses to trade with him, he needs to do it smartly by staying compact and setting traps to counter his counters, like I explained it with Chocolatito's example. But if he just gets off balance and throw jabs with his head leaning over his front foot, Martinez would do his usual thing and slip and counter them with brutal punches. I must repeat one more time that he cannot lean over his foot, because Martinez is looking exactly for that, for his opponents to either get off balance after slipping punches and lean over one of their sides, or to place their head right in front of him and in front of their own lead foot, their own lead glove and their own lead shoulder. The prediction time. The thing about this fight is that Martinez is a big favorite, as he should be, and Jay Harris's defense is leaky, so the stoppage is very probable in my opinion. However, I'm very uncertain during which time period of the fight it could occur, because it really depends on if Harris is going to be able to keep his defense tight during the fight. If he doesn't keep it tight, Martinez could exploit it early in the fight, or it could happen later in the fight. But if all the stars are aligned for Jay Harris, and that's a big if, because his footwork, his defense and timing have to be on point, as well as his chin and his endurance. But if he's able to withhold Martinez's pressure and go to distance, I would not be surprised if he wins a lot of rounds based on the qualities he displayed against the opponents who allowed him to display them. But that's the catch. Martinez probably won't allow him to dictate the tempo without punishing him. So, for my prediction, I'm picking Julio Cesar Martinez by stoppage, maybe around the 6th or the 7th round. But I'm really not sure when would it happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to distance neither. Thank you for watching.